Hello and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today. In this edition, we will talk about the Libyan crisis and the mediation efforts done by Egypt, but also one of the important events that took place today is the 32nd cultural seminar of the armed forces in which President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said that the issue of consciousness and preserving the solidarity of the state are the most important challenges facing Egyptians. He said that besides direct traditional wars that have sought the downfall of the state, there are new wars that aim to make the public opinion a means of destroying the state. And the president was speaking today during the Armed Forces 32nd Cultural Seminar, which coincides with the 47th anniversary of October War. In his speech, the president said there is great danger from the fourth and fifth generation wars, which he said aim to bring down the state through the people. He said the most important challenge is the stability of the state, which can only be achieved through the consciousness of the people. President el-Sisi said what has been achieved so far with regards to development is but one step in a long way. El-Sisi held the army, saying it exerts great efforts in parallel lines facing terrorism, contributing with the state in the building of the nation. Also, today we'll be discussing the latest developments in the Libyan file as within the framework of meetings that are due to be held in Cairo to settle the Libyan crisis. The Libyan constitutional path meetings were launched in Cairo on Sunday. Representatives of Senate and state councils in Libya are taking part in the meetings to review basis for the new Libyan constitution. The meetings are being held under the auspices of the UN and come after the latest security path meetings that were held in Hurghada. And to shed more light on the importance of this meeting, we are joined over the phone by Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former assistant to the Foreign Minister. Good afternoon, sir. Viewers, a short break and we'll be back, so stay tuned.
تحيا مصر! تحيا مصر! تحيا مصر! تحيا السيسي!
قرار مجلس النواب الليبي بالسماح للجيش المصري بالتدخل حماية لليبيا ولأمنها القومي وحماية للأمن القومي المصري.
القوات المصرية عندما تدخل ليبيا هيكون شيوخ القبائل على رأس هذه القوات بالعلم الليبي.
نحن جاهزون، ناتي الى سيدي البراني ونركب على السيارات العسكريه وندخل ليبيا لتحرير التراب الليبي.
احنا كلنا لا نبغي الا استقرار الدولة الليبية.
Welcome back. And Libyan parties are meeting in Cairo on Sunday under the auspices of the UN to discuss the constitutional path and basis for the new Libyan constitution. And to shed more light on this, we are joined over the phone by His Excellency Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former assistant to the Foreign Minister. Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador.
Good afternoon, madam.
So, sir, what are your expectations concerning today's meeting in Cairo?
Well, first of all, let us put this meeting into a larger context.
Yes.
A larger political and geographical context. As far as Egypt is concerned, this is the second conference, an inter-Libyan conference that
Yes.
Egypt hosts under the United Nations flag. The first one took place 10 days ago in Hurghada on the Red Sea. And this is the second one. In the meantime, Morocco has hosted two conferences. And today's conference in Cairo concerning the Constitution is part of this international and Arab effort to implement the Berlin Declaration of January 2020. And next month, Tunisia would host a larger political conference for the Libyan political forces and for the Libyan parliament and the State Council in Tripoli. So all these efforts tend to towards or aim towards the implementation of what was agreed upon at the Berlin summit last January. And Egypt has begun to talk to all sides in Libya, the National Accord government in Tripoli, and of course with the Libyan parliament in the east. So this is a good starting point to discuss the constitution and to discuss election schedules. The Libyans agreed to hold in one of their inter-Libyan conferences, agreed to hold general and presidential elections before the end of 2021.
Yes.
That is to say, before next year. But of course, in order to do that, they have to organize these elections in the context of a constitution. And agreeing on the constitution will be really a breakthrough, a political and constitutional breakthrough in the Libyan conflict. So let's hope that the meetings in Egypt between the Libyan parliament on the one hand and the State Council on the other hand would really lead to an agreement on the main objectives of the Constitution and the main clauses, its main clauses, and that would ensure a smooth democratic and political transition in Libya.
So, Mr. Ambassador, in his speech before today's meeting, Intelligence Chief Abbas Kamel said any settlement should be Libyan without no outside interventions. So, how do you read this statement and how can this be achieved?
I guess there is a wide international consensus,
yes,
as manifested in the Berlin Declaration, that any solution to the Libyan conflict must be owned by the Libyans themselves. In other words, no outside power would dictate to the Libyans or should dictate to the Libyans or part of the Libyans what they should do or what steps Libya should take in order to put an end to the bloody conflict that has engulfed Libya for the last 3 years. So definitely a Libyan ownership of the political transition, of reaching an accord, a comprehensive agreement on the way forward is a must.
Yes. Also, he said that Hurghada hosted lately a meeting of the meeting over Libya for security and military settlements in preparation for the 5+5 UN-sponsored meetings. How do you see the outcome of the security and military path meetings?
Well, of course, these were recommendations, madam. And as I understand it, these recommendations should be discussed and reviewed in the context of the next meeting of the Joint Military Commission known as 5+5.
Yes.
And let's hope that the two sides would agree or would approve the recommendations elaborated at the Hurghada meeting.
Yes.
The main feature of these recommendations was, of course, to accept that the line from Sirte in the north to Al-Jufra in the south would be the line of control or the line the ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire line. And that's very important for the following political and economic and financial steps and measures that should be taken in Libya. Well, to sum it up, I guess we can say with guarded optimism that Libya, now we could say that Libya is on the road of a general national reconciliation. And let's hope that all these meetings, whether in Morocco, in Egypt, in Tunisia, and in the next few weeks in Geneva, all these meetings would really help in elaborating a way forward that enjoys a national consensus among the Libyans.
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former assistant for the Foreign Minister. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And back to some reports from the African continent. Spain refugees, concerning Spain refugees, as hundreds of refugees from Africa arrived in Spain's Canary Islands last week, some in need to get treatment in hospital. Details in this report.
More than 1,000 migrants from Africa have arrived in the Spanish Canary Islands over the last 48 hours. The Red Cross said these are figures that have not been seen for more than a decade. On a visit to the islands, Spain's migration minister promised a comprehensive response. The UN said this route from West Africa has grown in popularity since 2018. A previous peak in 2006 saw 35,000 migrants arrive in the islands. A military statement said any of the migrants would have set sail from Senegal, more than 1,600 kilometers away, where this week 2 boats carrying 186 people were intercepted by Senegalese Marines. The passengers were reported to have been from Senegal and the Gambia. Spanish media said the migrants who arrived in the Canary Islands since Thursday were rescued from 37 boats. Many are being looked after by the Spanish Red Cross in camps near where they disembarked.
And the majority of South Sudan's population have been keeping their money at home instead of in banks to avoid possible confiscation amid the country's economic crisis. Now the government is announcing the issuing of a new currency. More in the following report.
South Sudan's cabinet has agreed to change the country's currency in order to improve the economy. Information Minister Michael Makawei-Luwith told a news conference in the capital Juba following a cabinet meeting that the cabinet has decided that the current currency should be changed. This is to improve the economic situation. The country's current currency is the South Sudanese pound, adopted when the country seceded from Sudan in 2011 after a long civil war. Another war, along with graft and mismanagement, led to an economic crisis in the oil-producing nation. In July, a central bank official announced that South Sudan had run out of foreign exchange reserves and could not stop the pound's depreciation. The South Sudanese pound has tumbled rapidly, trading at 510 South Sudanese pounds for $1 on the black market, while the central bank is selling at 167 South Sudanese pounds. Luwith did not give a date when the new currency will be introduced. He said the people will be given a time limit. He also said Friday's cabinet meeting was also attended by the representatives of the commercial banks operating in the country, who are part of an economic committee working with the central bank. Production of crude oil, South Sudan's main revenue source, has slumped to about 165,000 barrels per day, while the global price has dropped due to the coronavirus pandemic.
And the CAF unveiled the final date of Egypt versus Togo games in 2022 African Cup of Nations qualifiers. CAF named the referee crew from Rwanda to officiate the first game, while the second game will be officiated by Senegalese whistle. Details in the following report.
The Confederation of African Football, CAF, have revealed the date of the 2022 African Cup of Nations qualifiers games, as Egypt will face Togo in the third round of Group G games next November. Egypt's national football team manager Mohamed Barakat said, CAF have disclosed to the Egyptian Football Association (EFA) the final date of the national football team's game against Togo. He said Egypt will host Togo in the third round of the 2022 African Cup of Nations qualifiers on the 14th of November. As for the two sides, will meet again in the fourth round on the 17th of the same month. He also said CAF named a referee crew from Rwanda to officiate the first game, while the second match will be officiated by a Senegalese whistle. The Pharaohs, seven-time African Cup champions, were held to draws by Minnows, Kenya and Comoros in their opening qualifying games last year. The group winners will advance to the 2022 Nations Cup finals in Cameroon. The Nations Cup was scheduled to start on the 9th of January 2021 in Cameroon, but the fate of the continental tournament was unclear given the CAF had postponed 3 rounds of qualifiers. The African Football Governing Body announced that the prestigious tournament, which was scheduled to be played in early 2021, has been postponed until January 2022 due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Well, dear viewers, that's all for Africa Today. Stay tuned for more coming up on Nile TV International.